Okay, guys, welcome to lesson 4 of chapter 2. Hope you guys are feeling all right. As I mentioned, this chapter is a monster. We go through lots in here, and it's very, very, very important, heavy work that requires a lot of thinking on your part to pull together all of these ideas about policy and principles and morals and values and the law, and culling it down into succinct sentences that communicate well to your electorate. So I know it's tough, so congrats on all the hard work you put in thus far. So we're at lesson 4, and let's jump into it. This is a quick one, but essentially we need to narrow down the number of issues we talk about on the campaign. So we have our issue database in Excel, which we'll jump back into in a moment. And we should have a pretty big laundry list there. It should have some basic information about what the issue is, your basic stance, some resources when you want to know more about it. You should fill out the principles and the morals section, because we used that in the last lesson to come up with those little paragraphs about principles and about morals. And now we need to start narrowing that list. So we'll keep all the information that's in there. It's all super valuable. But really we need to decide what handful of issues are we going to focus on with the campaign. If you have 30 issues in your database, that's too many to talk about. That starts to muddy the waters, then people don't really know what you stand for. They can't say, oh yeah, he really cares about, or she's really into this issue. It's too muddied. So it depends on what office you're running for. That determines really the size or the number of issues that you can be super focused on. But I'd say sort of for your average city council race in a town that's a couple 100,000 people, maybe 5 or 6 issues that you hammer home about. Of course, you're going to need to be able to understand almost everything that your constituents come to talk to you about. You really should be able to hammer home and keep talking about 5 or 6 issues. Those should be your bread and butter. And the number's pretty arbitrary, so it's really use your guys' gut here to think about it. So in the issue database, I built in a little bit of logic there that I showed you briefly before about how to prioritize these issues. So let's go back to our issue database in Excel. So here we are in our issue database, and as you know from previous lessons, I have 4 issues here that I have made up about adopting gas taxes and forcing people to make their fences in their front yard a certain way, and Pledge of Allegiance, punishing students if they don't do it, and then forcing businesses on Main Street to be open at a certain time. So what we're going to do is take a look at this row here. We talked about this before, but I wanted to brush over it again really quick. So we have these different criteria. Power of your office to impact. So 1 is low and 5 is high. So how much power does your office have to make any sort of change on this issue? We said 5 here, so really high. Likelihood that the issue is going to come up. This is how much are people talking about it in the community? How much buzz is there? So we put 5. A good proxy for this is if you're looking at social media groups in your local community, how much are people talking about this? Are there editorials written regularly about it in newspapers around you? And sexiness, cultural relevance, this is a bit more subjective, so I'll leave it to you to get the feel for your community in your own way about the issue. But it's essentially how popular is it, and are people really devouring information about it, and really into talking about it? And then the last one, easily grasped and talked about. This is just how tangible is the issue. If the issue is about repaving a road that goes through the middle of town, everybody can grasp that perfectly. If it's an issue about the example I used before, Fed monetary policy, that's tough. Or some really detailed zoning requirement between 2 different types of businesses that are only on on the outskirts of town. If you're everyday school teacher gonna get that, or Joe the plumber, as Sarah Palin liked to talk about. Yeah, I don't know. So the other one is down here in this row. The other like prioritization type metrics is the issue very heated. That's a simple yes or no. Does the law speak definitively on it? Yes or no. And is your stance in line with the law? Yes or no. And then we have this issue priority here. So this is like populated automatically based on logic that I've already built into the program behind this. So, and it's on a 1 to 5 scale. So you can see issue number 1 has a 4.3 4.3 issue priority rating. So that's pretty high. So if you look at the rest of the issues here, you can see that they also have priorities assigned. So issue number 2, priority is 3.5. Issue number 3, priority 1.8, and issue number 4, priority 3.0. Let's take a look at this 1.8 issue. Should students be punished for not reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? So you can see like power of office to impact is 1. Likelihood it's going to come up, 3, because people are talking about it a little bit more. Sexiness, cultural relevance, 2, so it's been pretty big, but it's like, kind of out now. People aren't talking about it as much. 2, easily grasped and talked about, that's wrong. That should be a 5 actually, or a 4. It's a little bit more arcane than that. So you can see that I brought it up to like 2.5. So I just wanted to demonstrate that it's these like different weighted averages of these different criteria that change the issue priority here. So now you're going to go to the tab. You'll see down on the bottom we have a priority rankings tab. You can click on that, and I'm not sure if that shows up in the video. I think it cuts off down there, so sorry about that, guys. But there's tabs across the bottom like a standard Excel sheet, and we're on the priority rankings tab. So what you'll see here is all of the information in columns A, B, and C. This feeds through from the issue database tab, just like we've walked through with the principles and morals and stuff. So don't change any of the content in A, B, and C. That'll just mess with the whole thing. So you'll see we have some like ugly, garish instructions here in yellow, because I don't want you to miss them. And what you're going to do is you're going to copy all the content from the table on the left into the table on the right. So let's go ahead and do that. So it says we're going to copy all content from left table, paste values only over the right table, then sort the right table based on priority. So let me zoom out here a little bit, just so it's easier for everybody to see. I know it's zoomed out pretty far, sorry. So we'll take A, B, and C, and we'll go ahead and copy that, and then we'll select over here, go ahead and paste it in, but it says paste values only. So we'll paste special, and then do values only. Sorry, there's not a more automated way to do this, guys. This is really the best way. So what we're going to do to sort it, we're going to select these tables, or select just this table on the right. We're going to go to data, and we're going to go to filter. And then what that does, it gives us these handy little tools up here that we can use. So what we're going to do is click on the one by priority, and then do sort A to Z. Sorry, we're going to sort Z to A. Got to do it the other way. And then what it does is it gives us our issues based on priority. So we know that the issue we should talk about the most is, should the county adopt a 1-cent tax on gasoline to pay for wildlife restoration? And then let me zoom in here a little bit for you guys. So you can see our priorities here in descending priority. So the highest is the 1-cent gasoline issue, and then homeowners being forced to have their fences built a certain way in their front yards, businesses on Main Street open from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. forced, and then should students be punished for not reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So that's how we come up with the prioritization. And so what when you build this out completely, you'll have tons of issues in here. You know, you have 30 or whatever issues that you've come across to feed in here. And then you'll just want to take the top like 5 or 6 or so, depending on your particular race, and those will be the ones that you can concentrate on for the rest of the campaign. So then, once you have those identified, then you can come back here to your issue database that we talked about. And let's see, what was the one that we should talk about the most here? Oh, the 1 cent tax on gasoline. Okay, so you can go back to your issue database here, and for those like top 5 or 6 or so issues, and then probably a few more too on top of it, just for good measure, you'll go in here and you'll write an issue statement. So just like I've done for adopting a 1 cent tax on gasoline. So you use this cell here with the guidance for crafting your message, and that's also like programmatically built into this program that I've built for you guys to give you direction about how to talk about the issue based off of the criteria above that you've already input in. And you'll want to craft your issue statement here. So I say like the top 5 6 issues and a few more. Get that issue statement really hammered out. And then for the rest of the issues, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have an issue statement built out as well. I understand that it like gets a bit cumbersome and time consuming. So after you, the candidate yourself, build out these issue statements, you could probably bring on like a volunteer from the campaign or a policy advisor. We'll talk about these different roles for the campaign later on in the course. But you could bring somebody on to look at what you've already written and what you say and what you talk about on these issues, and then fill out the policy statements for you, because these can all be very handy in the future. So that's it for issue prioritization within the database. Now let's layer on a few more things to talk about in terms of prioritizing issues. So we'll meet you back in 1 second. Okay, here we are to talk about a few more things to consider in the prioritization of the issues. So we have our list of prioritized in the database, and then we need to talk about things like popularity of your position. So it may be something that according to our database that you should talk about a lot, like it's, you know, sexy, people grasp it really easily, and there's lots of like cultural relevance and all of these things. But let's say your position is different than how a majority of the voters are going to feel about it. Well, you're probably not going to want to talk about it a whole lot. So there's this question about, do you change your stance? Do you change where you are on the issue? Well, that's actually covered in a later lesson, but we will talk about that. But for now, we'll assume that you're not going to change your stance, and there's a lot of reasons why you would and why you wouldn't. But if your position is very unpopular, doesn't matter how high it's ranked in our database that we put together, you probably shouldn't talk about it a whole lot. Second, look at historical context. So if this is an issue that gets talked about and talked about and talked about and talked about and nothing ever happens with it, then at a certain point it's time to move on from it. So if there's like a chronic ailment in your community, like maybe like a really dangerous turn in a highway that runs through town and people die every year on it, but because of some weird like uber political situation, they can't straighten out the road and they can't do this or they can't do that, so it's just become gridlock. Then at a certain point, it's like if you bring it up, all it's going to do is piss people off. Like if you really know it's a lose-lose situation, then really all you're doing is pissing people off. So you got to look at historical context like that as well. Another thing to consider is key figures, like key people that have been associated with these issues. And maybe those aren't the kind of people you want to associate with. So look at the history of the issue before you make it one of your like top prioritized one, and pay particular attention to people that have been involved in whatever like movements there are around the different sides of the issue. Could be like a previous like a mayor or elected official or something that brought like a particular amount of toxicity to the issue or toxicity to the discourse. And that's something that you're going to want to stay out of. Or if there's if there's one person that was particularly tied to a stance on an issue, and then it turns out that that they were like arrested for doing something terrible and disgusting and shameful, and now they're this like really gross figure for the community, that you got to stay away from that sort of stuff. So look around, look for toxic people and key figures of the race. So that's all that I have for you guys on issue prioritization. Once again, I know it's meaty. I know this stuff is big. So thanks for sticking it out and going through all this material. I anticipate there's going to be a handful of questions, so feel free to keep asking them over in the comments section, or like shoot me a Snapchat. I could like talk through it that way. That's the best way for students to get a hold of me one-on-one, actually. The comments in the lesson, or shoot me a Snapchat, and I'll do my best to get back to you guys. And as always, I've mentioned this a couple of times, elsewhere, but in case you didn't catch it, I do offer one-on-one coaching, and one of the things that I really love to work through is taking a look at all the issues in the community, formulating stances on all of them, and then using that to inform how we should talk about your campaign and key messaging that you should be delivering, and developing your brand through that. That's stuff that I absolutely love to do and would be happy to work with you. So get in touch with me. I do have to limit quite a bit the number of candidates that I can do that one-on-one coaching with. But if you're interested, get in touch with me, and we'll see if we can make something work out. Okay, guys. I hope that you're doing well with this. We'll see you in the next lesson, where we wrap all this stuff together and come up with like the key campaign message, the campaign slogan. Thanks.